Welcome to MCF Gantt Pro demo on the advanced features. We went through a lot of the basic navigation in the previous videos and how to add and move tasks around. So in this video, we're going to go through some of the more advanced features that are available inside of the Gantt Pro product. By right-clicking on any task, you'll be able to see a task menu. So you can add tasks from here directly as well as clicking the Create button above. But I could add, for example, a task below. And we'll just call this, our new task. I can right-click on it and indent, which will also automatically make it a subtask of the task above it. I can drag and drop as well. So let's say I don't want this task to be part of my kickoff. I want it to be at the end. I can simply click on it and drag it down and drop it here, and it'll show up at the end of my task list. We can also click here to add a milestone. So for example, it's going to automatically add a task below that is a milestone. So you'll notice that on this new milestone task that it also made the duration 0 days. So if you were to manually create a task and set it to 0-day duration, it would also be represented as a milestone here on the right-hand side. We can also go through and again, we can delete that task. We can outdent as well. If I want to make it a subtask, creating a subtask as we did before, so you can add it and add a subtask, or you can actually control the indent outdent feature. And then if you want to click here for equals, this is essentially just saying that you want to filter this particular column where anything equals the same name. So let's say that I also call this new task and we set it equals here. I'm going to see any task that has new task. And I see design and architecture because this first new task is a part of that particular task. Since it's a subtask, I'm going to see the parent as well. And then again, we can click here and we can remove our filter and bring back our entire task list. All right, so from here, we can go ahead and click in the edit task. We mentioned on the other video, you can also do so by clicking the edit up above. If you have a particular task highlighted, it's going to take you to the same task information card that pops up. So what you're going to see here first is the general information. So it gives you the name of your task. Everything can be edited directly from here. So maybe I want to call it kickoff instead of kickoff meeting. You can set your % complete. So I can call this 100% done. You'll see here that it adjusted my percentage automatically in the background while I'm working on this data set. I can change my effort here as well for this particular task. And my start date, my finish date, and my durations as well we can affect. So you can see here that as I update my finish date, it's going to automatically update my duration. Same with the start date. It's going to affect my timeline over here on the right. I can add my dependencies through either the grid, through dragging and dropping the marks here. So for example, if I want my new tasks to be a finish to start successor to UAT, I can drag it that way. But you can add your dependencies directly through here, through predecessors and successors, similar to how we drag and drop them on the grid down below, or on the table view down below, and the grid as well through the predecessor or successor column. I can also do it here through the plus sign or the deletion. And you can see here all of my successors are already listed, so I already have one that's finished to start. I can update my lag here as well. So maybe I want it to be 4 days instead of 0 days, and you can see the timeline affected. I can update my resource assignments through this task card as well. So not only can I set them through the column view and the grid view, but I can also add them directly here. So let's say I want this one to be assigned to Charlie, and I can enter in the units as well. So maybe only 50% of his time is going to be taken up with this particular task. This units is going to be more important as well when we go through things like our effort driven. So over here in the advanced mode, you can set the scheduling mode for each task and also for your project. So let's say instead of normal, I want to do a fixed units. So if I go back here to my general tab and I update my duration, you'll see here that my effort is also going to continue to rise because it's taking 50% of that time over the number of days and durations that we have. We also have fixed duration, fixed effort, and then our normal, which is how most people would typically use the Gantt. We automatically start with our default calendar that is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can define a calendar that is different. So we also have full day and a short day to cover like normal business days if you don't anticipate working on the weekend. You can select manually scheduled. and we're going to make this one manually scheduled. And what that means is that even though there's a dependency, if I were to drag the predecessor, this task is not going to move as it typically would in line. And that's because it is set as a manually scheduled. So if I go back in and I deselect that manually scheduled, as my predecessor moves, my successor will move as well. Next, again, we have effort-driven, so you can define it if it's effort-driven. That will affect your durations as you go through. And you also have the ability to add and remove constraint types. So you can clear a constraint simply by clicking the X, and you'll notice that the constraint date is also removed. But you have the ability to add a must start on, must finish on, start no earlier than, start no later than, and then finish no earlier than and finish no later than. And then once you define a constraint type, so for example, start no earlier than, and you'll see that it automatically adjusted to the date on my task, but you can adjust that as needed. And then you can also include a roll-up. So what that means for the roll-up, let me bring this column in. So by clicking on the new column, I can define which column I want to bring in. So let's say for development, for example, I want to see customized script and native Quickbase as a roll-up. So I'm going to expand my view here for a second, click on the features and show roll-ups. And you'll see here that it's only going to show me those particular values. So in development, I'm able to hover on this and I can see in a single taskbar both of my roll-up tasks. So I can see that we have native Quickbase development and customized script development. And even though they're listed here as particular taskbars, I can represent roll-ups similar to how we showed the baselines. And in here, I can see my kickoff meeting as a roll-up for my project. So let's say, for example, I wanted QAT to be a roll-up and then maybe new task. And you can see here that my roll-up taskbars are displayed up here for my project level since these don't have a parent task. And that covers our advanced section. We also have, if you go all the way to the right, a notes. So you can add task level notes to any particular task that you want. And this will get saved back to Quickbase so that you can report on it as well. And then in our new columns here, you have the ability to view the calendar that you're on, any of your constraint information. If you have a deadline, so for example, you can say, my deadline for this task is the 24th. Again, just something that you can go ahead and see where you're tracking versus your particular deadline. So we're in October here, so we're not affecting that deadline. The early end, early start are related to the constraint. The effort is just defining how much effort it is taking for that particular task. So again, this is useful to have. It's typically more useful if you're doing something like an effort-driven. So you can see here, if I right-click on a column header that's already existing, I can hide the column that I'm on. So it's going to hide effort, for example. Or I can see all the different columns that are currently displayed and toggle through those as well. So I can remove roll-up. But if I click on the one that says new column, I'm going to see all of the column headers that are available to choose from, not just the ones that are already selected. So from here, I can see my event mode, I can see my finish. Late end and late start are related to the constraint. We have our manually scheduled, so you can select that box directly here inside the grid versus inside the task card. Milestone is another way to represent your milestone. So it's represented by a 0-day duration, but also by checking this box. So you can see here, when I check it, that it automatically updated my duration to 0 days. We also have the ability to see the notes. So those task notes that I added are available here to update directly versus having to update them inside of the task card. And again, because notes can get long, you can actually drag this end for the column width around as needed so that you can see it and expand it if you need to see more information there. You can also see our status. So we went through this a bit in the first video, but I can see here because the start dates are in October that I am late because we're currently in November. And I can see here that this one is completed because it's 100% done. We also see the ability for scheduling modes. This is, again, what we saw in that task card under the advanced section. So everything is currently scheduled normally, but I can select that from here if I want to do it in a different way. For example, doing a fixed duration. We're going to go ahead and hide some of these columns just because it's getting a little bit full here. And then for our final options, we have our show and timeline. So this is the checkbox that controls whether or not the task is visible in the project timeline that appears up above the Gantt. We also have successors, which just like predecessors will show you what's the successor for a particular task. And then you can include Slack as well.